In the present day, a carriage appears to have been attacked by monsters. There, a young defenseless girl is at the mercy of goblins. But just when things seem hopeless, a black figure steps forward to protect her. Skip past a few years, our lonely virgin main protagonist, Lost, is unexpectedly invited by a girl to form a group with her, leaving everyone in the Adventurers Guild completely shocked. The healer, who's holding a recruitment sign, is taken by surprise as the girl. The girl then shows off her skills in front of him, making it clear she means business. Slightly embarrassed by the situation, Lost introduces himself as a healer or something similar. However, Amherst, a guild employee, grabs Narcina by the shoulders, asking if she realizes she's inviting the useless virgin into her group. According to Amherst, Lost is only capable of basic healing and nothing more. An orphan similar to you who came from the labyrinth. He's been an adventurer since childhood but hasn't developed his skills beyond the basics, earning him a reputation as an incompetent. Worse still, Lost once joined a group called the Lightning Blades, only to be kicked out due to his lack of ability. Because of all this, Lost is known as the most useless adventurer in Mard. Amherst warns Narcina that unless she's wealthy, relying on Lost will drain her resources. In response, Narcina confidently pulls out a bag of money, reassuring Amherst that she'll be fine. The guild employee warns her to be cautious with her money in such a shady place, full of sketchy characters lurking in the shadows. Grateful for the advice, Narcina thanks Amherst, but remains determined to form a group with Lost, stating she made her decision long ago. Amherst, intrigued by her persistence, hands them the registration form for group members. While Lost signs, Narcina gazes at him, feeling like she's finally found the person she's been searching for. Caught off guard when Lost passes her the form, she jumps slightly, having been lost in her thoughts. Once both names are on the form, Amherst asks for the service fee, which Lost pays. With everything settled, Narcina eagerly announces that their group is officially formed and extends her hand to greet her new companion. Though confused by her enthusiasm, Lost politely shakes her hand. Without delay, the two head to the Mard Labyrinth. Along the way, Lost explains that no one has ever reached the end of the labyrinth, so the final boss remains unknown. Many parts of the dungeon are unexplored, offering countless opportunities for adventure, and it makes Mard the largest labyrinth city in the region. Narcina, however, wonders if it's a good idea to head straight into the dungeon, given Amherst's earlier suggestion to try the western field first. Lost explains that many areas around Mard experience monster attacks due to the magical energy leaking from the labyrinth, such as the eastern mountains, the northern forests, and the southern swamp. The western field does have weaker creatures, but it's so vast that finding them is difficult. In contrast, the labyrinth is packed with creatures, and as long as they stick to the early sections, the monsters shouldn't be much of a threat. After their journey, the duo finally arrives at the entrance of the labyrinth. Narcina confidently takes the lead as any skilled martial artist would, leaving Lost to provide support. While he's fine with this, Lost silently questions whether this beginner can really handle the monsters inside. However, it quickly becomes clear that Narcina is more than capable, as she relentlessly obliterates every monster they encounter, even striking a flashy victory pose after each battle. Impressed, Lost realizes she's not to be underestimated. Meanwhile, they collect the items dropped by the defeated monsters as they continue through the dungeon. The healer explains to Narcina that the items they collected are magic stones, which adventurers sell to the guild. The guild then uses the magic within these stones to create various items. Narcina, though skilled in combat, admits she didn't know this despite it being basic knowledge for adventurers. She asks how much the stones are worth, and Lost tells her that the ones dropped by goblins aren't very valuable. To make more money, they'll need to defeat stronger monsters that drop pricier items. Still, what they've gathered should be enough to cover their lodging for the night. Narcina, eager for more action, suggests they continue deeper into the labyrinth, promising to protect her healer no matter what. They press on, and soon, Narcina narrowly avoids falling into a trap. Lost, quick to react, places a stone on a block to trigger the mechanism, revealing a pit filled with iron spikes and unfortunate adventurers who weren't as lucky. Shocked, Narcina asks how he spotted the trap, and Lost explains that the block looked darker than the others, raising his suspicion. While she thought trap detection was a thief's skill, Lost admits that after years of adventuring, he's picked up a few tricks. As they proceed, the duo encounters an orc, which looks oddly similar to your mother and much stronger than anything they should be facing at this part of the labyrinth. Lost suggests they can defeat it if they work together. Without hesitation, Narcina charges at the orc, landing a powerful spinning kick to its chest. Though it feels like kicking a stone wall, she's able to dodge its slower attacks. However, when the orc slams its club into the ground, shards of rock fly everywhere, one of which strikes Narcina's arm. The orc then pins her against the wall, ready to deliver a fatal blow. Just in time, Lost steps in and defeats the orc with his sword. Narcina, shocked and grateful, asks if he's really just a healer. Lost, playing it off, explains that he's learned to fight after years of adventuring. He then notices her injury from the rock shard and heals her arm. Afterward, they collect the magic stone dropped by the orc, a much more valuable item than the goblin stones. Despite their haul, Marcena wants to delve deeper into the labyrinth, face even tougher challenges, and Lost doesn't object. By late afternoon, they return to the guild with a large collection of magic stones. Amherst, the receptionist, is stunned to see how many items they gathered, especially the orc stone. She accuses Lost of recklessly taking the rookie into the deeper parts of the dungeon, but Lost explains that the orc was unexpectedly near the entrance. Amherst believes him as she's heard rumors of strange happenings in the Marred Labyrinth. However, Amherst, being in a lower-ranking position within the guild, hasn't been informed of the details regarding the strange happenings in the labyrinth. Setting the conversation aside, she asks if Lost and Marcena want to sell all their magic stones. But when Lost confirms, Amherst beams with excitement and quickly arranges their payment. Marcena, puzzled by her enthusiasm, asks Lost why the receptionist is so happy. Lost explains that guild employees earn a commission when adventurers under their management sell items to the guild. This means they've done Amherst a big favor, which is why she's no longer upset about them disobeying her earlier advice to head to the western field instead of the labyrinth. With no use dwelling on the past, Amherst hands them their payment, a sum 10 times larger than what Lost was used to receiving from his previous expeditions. In that moment, he realizes that his old group, the Lightning Blades, had been cheating him the whole time. Marcena, irritated, comments that the guild should ensure all group members receive their fair share for the work they've done. Amherst responds that the guild only mediates payments if the group pays the required fee for such services. Lost, however, decides to let it go, as the Lightning Blades are part of his past and it's time to move on. With that, the duo bids farewell to Amherst. Meanwhile, a man upstairs named Handsome watches Lost as he leaves the guild. A little later, while Amherst gleefully counts her coins like a crackhead, Handsome approaches her and scolds her for letting Lost join a new group. Amherst clarifies that she didn't recommend the healer to anyone. Marcena was the one who insisted on forming a group with him. Later, Lost and Marcena head to a nearby tavern, where they're greeted by a young waitress. However, the waitress seems less than thrilled to see her friend Lost accompanied by another girl. Afterward, Lost approaches Mary, the waitress's mother, to book a room. The innkeeper asks if they want to share a room or have separate ones. Marcena feels a bit anxious, but Lost promptly says they'll take separate rooms. Marcena quietly admits to herself that she would have preferred sharing a room, but she keeps it to herself. As they head to their respective quarters, they wish each other good night. Lying in bed, Marcena's thoughts drift back to her childhood, recalling the day her carriage overturned on the road and Lost healed her injured arm. It was that moment that inspired her to become an adventurer and find Lost, determined to protect him in return. Since then, she trained rigorously and came straight to Mard upon hearing that Lost had been kicked out of his group. Now with Lost in her group, Marcena feels a bit disheartened that he doesn't seem to recognize her, as she's changed so much since their childhood encounter. Furthermore, despite all of her training, it seems like Lost doesn't need her help as much as she thought. He's proven to be much stronger than the rumors suggested. Still, Marcena remains committed to keeping her promise and staying by his side. She doesn't understand why people call him useless when it's clear Lost has real talent. Looking back, we are shown how his former party was in terrible shape after being decimated by a powerful dragon. There, he managed to heal one of the girls, but couldn't neutralize the poison in her system. He reassured her that rest would eventually cure it, but this only frustrated her further. The party began to fall apart since their leader needed everyone ready to fight, yet the girl was in no condition for battle. Tensions rose when Lost pointed out they would need antidotes, which they couldn't afford. Frustrated, the leader insulted Lost, calling him useless, and ordered the mage to attack the beast with everything she had. However, her fireball only enraged the creature more, and the leader, furious at his team's incompetence, concluded that leading such a group of failures was impossible. He retreated, advising the others to do the same. The mage quickly fled, and Lost stayed behind to assist the injured girl. Later, Lost was kicked out of the Lightning Sword party, taking the blame for their failure to defeat the Hydra. They claimed his abilities as a healer were inadequate, though Lost pointed out that their defeat was due to the team's partying the night before. This only escalated the arguments. The leader left it to the mage to decide who was at fault, and feeling pressured, she placed the blame on Lost. Now in the present, Lost reflects on how this wasn't the first time something like this had happened. 6 years earlier, his reputation as the most incompetent healer was already well known. Despite this, Lost never gave up on his dream of becoming a great adventurer. He was eventually invited to join a party, but it turned out they didn't need a healer. Instead, they used him as bait to lure monsters, a common fate for labyrinth orphans like Lost. However, he wasn't even good at being bait, and the party was wiped out. Lost had always hated pain and feared death, but when he saw a young girl in danger, he pushed those fears aside. To this day, he doesn't know why he ran to help her, but he fought the goblins as best he could before being knocked unconscious. When he woke, he realized it wasn't him who had saved the girl, it was a group of knights. This reinforced his belief that he was still incompetent. But the girl saw things differently. She thanked Lost, explaining that his actions had bought them enough time for the knights to arrive and save them. Lost healed her, and upon hearing how poorly he was treated, the girl cried for him. Sympathetic to his plight, she made a vow to become an adventurer herself, so she could team up with him and protect him. Coming from a noble family, Lost knew her dream was impossible, but her words still gave him hope. Determined, he sought out a teacher and began training. He learned basic healing techniques and other important skills that every adventurer should have. Eventually, Lost felt confident that he had become a competent adventurer, and that's when he joined the Lightning Sword party. He credited the girl for keeping him motivated and preventing him from giving up on his dream. Thinking about her now, Lost realizes that he's glad he didn't give up, especially since that decision led him to meet Narcina. Just as Lost finishes reflecting, Narcina arrives and the two head out for breakfast. Afterward, they venture into the labyrinth, planning to delve even deeper than before. When they reach a teleportation circle, Narcina sees one for the first time. Curious, she wonders if it can send them anywhere, but Lost explains that these circles can only connect to other places with teleportation circles. Narcina jokes that it would be better if they were placed in towns, but quickly realizes that doing so would make it easier for monsters to attack. Lost then corrects Narcina, explaining that monsters can't actually use teleportation circles. The reason these circles aren't found in towns is because the knowledge required to create them was lost hundreds of years ago, and no one today has the skill to make new ones. After that, they use the teleportation circle and arrive at the middle levels of the labyrinth, where the monsters are much stronger, so they have to proceed with caution. They soon encounter a monster, but Narcina's attack is ineffective. Lost explains that it's a lich, a spirit-based monster that lacks a physical form, making it immune to standard attacks. Monsters like this are difficult for adventurers who can't use magic, and Lost suggests they should flee. However, Narcina is determined to fight, confident in her abilities. The two devise a plan. Lost distracts the lich and lures it toward Narcina. Through intense training, some humans can manipulate ki and inner energy, allowing martial artists like Narcina to even attack spiritual entities. Using this power, Narcina delivers a devastating blow and destroys the lich. The two celebrate, though Narcina is injured. Lost uses a magic tool that enhances healing, restoring her health. The lich leaves behind a valuable magic core, and Narcina wonders how much it will fetch at the guild. When they return, Amherst, the guild's administrator, is once again impressed by the treasures they've brought in. After receiving a substantial reward, Lost and Narcina head back into town, where they stumble upon a heated argument between adventurers. Lost comments that troublemaking adventurers have been causing unrest in town lately, but he decides there's nothing they can do and suggests they treat themselves to a fancy meal. When they arrive at a restaurant, the waitress questions whether Lost can afford such an expensive meal, but he confidently tells her to get him a beer. Narcina also wants to indulge, but a young waitress informs her that they don't serve alcohol to minors. While feasting, Narcina brings up something she's been curious about. She saw a tall structure in town with no doors or windows, and there are several of these strange buildings. It doesn't seem to be a monument. Lost admits he doesn't know what they are either, but reveals that he once asked some craftsmen about it. They said they were building the structures, but even they didn't know who commissioned them. The project was initiated by a series of agents, each hiding the identity of the true client. Though mysterious, the structures haven't bothered anyone, so people don't question them. Lost thinks the town should focus on building a city wall instead, but Narcina prefers the city as it is. She points out that with so many adventurers around, the town doesn't need walls. Any invaders would be swiftly dealt with. That night, the pair prepare to sleep. Narcina wants to tell Lost something, but chickens out at the last moment. She had hoped to share a room with him, but can't bring herself to ask. Meanwhile, Lost reflects on how fortunate he is to have a reliable partner. He also wonders if the girl he met years ago will ever return, though he acknowledges that without her, he wouldn't have made it this far as an adventurer. The next day, the leader of the Lightning Sword party introduces a new healer. Though the other members are less than thrilled, the leader remains upbeat, declaring that this time they will defeat the Hydra. Meanwhile, in another part of the city, a mysterious man receives word from someone named Handsome. Handsome reports that someone called the Sleeping Beauty is in this city and has teamed up with Lost. Alarmed by this, the man orders Handsome to ensure Lost is expelled from the city as soon as possible, fearing that time is running out. In a distant dark territory cloaked in shadows and surrounded by dead trees, Margulis observes that the Hydra's severed heads haven't regrown. With this in mind, he declares that he and Lyra will launch the attack, with Armia providing magical support from afar and Siberia sneaking around for a surprise assault. Lyra, however, reminds him that she's a healer and shouldn't be on the front lines. Margulis finds this strange, recalling that Los, their previous healer, would always join the fray. She finds it absurd to push a healer into close combat, but Margulis explains that Los would charge in recklessly, sometimes landing a good hit. Siberia adds that it was Lost who managed to sever the Hydra's heads, but Margulis still insists that Lyra stay back for safety, taking on the front lines himself. Meanwhile, the protagonist and his partner return to the guild after a day of gathering, exchanging their haul from the dungeon for money. Judging by their quality of items, Amherst, the guild receptionist, assumes they'd ventured into the dungeon's intermediate levels and warns them to be cautious, suggesting they recruit more members to take on greater challenges. Lost considers it but prefers things as they are for now. Impressed with their progress, Amherst notes they're making enough to eventually afford a private house, which could serve as both a base and, as she teasingly adds, a love nest since they're a couple. This remark embarrasses Narcina, and she becomes furious, while Lost reflects on how his previous group, the Lightning Blade, rented a house where his room was mostly used for storage. Amherst remarks that his old group took advantage of his kindness, and she thinks it was probably for the best that he left. After another failed attempt to defeat the Hydra, Margulis seethes with frustration. While healing Armia, Lyra observes his determination even though he lacks the strength to face the Hydra head-on. Both Siberia and Margulis grudgingly admit that Loss, despite everyone's complaints, got the job done. They reflect on how he didn't even realize he was being underpaid. Margulis then wonders aloud why Lost had to leave, only for Siberia to remind him it was his own decision to kick Lost out. Comically surprised, Margulis doesn't even remember doing so and decides it will be simple to get Lost back by inviting him in person. Hours later, Armia wakes up to find Lyra, who had stayed by her side until she couldn't keep her eyes open. When Lyra offers to fetch something for her, she discovers that neither Margulis nor Siberia are in the house. They've gone back to the guild to invite Lost to rejoin the Lightning Blade. Margulis boldly proposes this in front of everyone, explaining to Narcina, who's shocked that he's Lost's former leader. Margulis adds that he knows it may be difficult to keep up with a first-class adventurer like him, but he'll make sure to protect Lost if things go wrong. Lost replies that this isn't the issue, but Margulis assumes it must be about money, insisting there was an error in Lost's previous pay. He insists that Lyra, the group's new healer, isn't skilled enough, so Lost's return is necessary. Lost responds with a polite thank you, giving the impression he might rejoin. Narcina, outraged, steps between them, fiercely defending her partner, now a valued member of her team. Lost then clarifies that his thank you was merely polite, as he has no intention of leaving his current group. Frustrated, Margulis accuses Narcina and the guild of taking advantage of Lost. Lost finally loses patience, gripping Margulis by the wrist and warning him to stop accusing Narcina. After that, he leaves without further explanation. Determined to defeat the Hydra, Margulis demands Amherst introduce him to a new, powerful frontliner. She's visibly tired of fulfilling his requests, but he declares to everyone present that the Lightning Blade will take down the Hydra no matter what. At that moment, a stranger steps forward, volunteering for the role. Margulis sizes him up and draws his sword to test him, ignoring Amherst's reminder that the guild isn't an arena. In an instant, the stranger disarms Margulis, astonishing everyone with his skill. Embarrassed, Margulis insists he was just going easy, but decides to recruit the man anyway. When Siberia questions if it's wise to trust someone who hides his face, Margulis replies that he only needs to trust his sword, nothing else. The Lightning Blade group stands at a turning point. Margulis is growing desperate. They can't afford any more failures against the Hydra. If they keep falling short, rumors will spread that they're incapable, sinking their reputation like a stone. To remedy this, Margulis asks their new recruit for his name. The man replies, Sieg, but hesitates, almost as if he made it up on the spot. Meanwhile, back at the inn, Narcina hears a knock and goes to answer. To her surprise, it's Sheila, the innkeeper's daughter, knocking on Lost's door. Narcina briefly suspects something's going on, but dismisses the thought, trusting Sheila. Just then, Lost appears and Sheila informs them they have visitors. Heading downstairs, Lost and Narcina find Lyra and Armia waiting at a table. Armia quickly apologizes, acknowledging that she's in no position to ask anything of Lost, but she needs his help. Lyra explains that Margulis has hired a new warrior and is planning another attempt against the Hydra. Armia admits that now, more than ever, she realizes how strong Lost is. If he hadn't severed a few of the Hydra's heads, the group might not have survived. She asks him once more to rejoin them, hoping to finally defeat the weakened Hydra. Lost considers the request and suspects Armia doesn't know Margulis had already approached him with the same offer. Narcina then asks Armia why she's still sticking by this group, knowing Margulis's attitude. Armia admits that Margulis is authoritarian, impulsive, rude, and downright reckless. Not to mention he's greedy, vengeful, and doesn't even brush his teeth. Yet despite all this, he's still her teammate. Frustrated, Narcina slams her hand on the table, demanding to know what loss ever meant to Armia. She points out that he was mistreated and neglected within the group, and nobody, including Armia, ever defended him. Armia admits she was too frightened to go against Margulis or Siberia, and even falsely blamed Loss for the team's failures. Remembering this, she breaks down, revealing she's only recently become an adventurer and didn't realize what she was doing. But now she knows Margulis was wrong. Despite everything, she feels unable to abandon her teammates. Lara gently explains that Armia has wanted to apologize to Lost all along, asking him to accept it. Lost extends his hand, reassuring Armia that he holds no grudges. She clasps his hand and thanks him sincerely, though he makes it clear he won't return to the lightning blade. Saddened, Armia lowers her head and says she understands. Just then, Mary the innkeeper arrives with a hearty meal, insisting she can't let a sad-looking girl leave her restaurant like this. As Armia gratefully digs in, Narcina asks Lyra if she might consider leaving the group with Armia. Lyra explains that if it were possible, she wouldn't be there in the first place. She, too, feels responsible for looking after Armia. Lost quietly remembers how Margulis belittled Lyra as useless and warns her that staying with the group may bring her trouble. But Lyra insists she won't abandon Armia. Later, as Lyra heads home, she encounters the new Lightning Blade recruit and addresses him as Sieg. Margulis overhears and corrects her. His name is indeed Sieg. The leader then calls the team to prepare for another attempt at the Hydra, more determined than ever. Lyra, however, pulls Sieg aside, questioning his presence and noticing he's wielding a familiar sword, Ronaldo's. Sieg nervously claims he inherited it from his mentor, then stumbles over his words, pretending he doesn't know Ronaldo at all. As Margulis' team once again heads into Hydra territory, bolstered by Margulis' renewed confidence, Lost and Narcina set off on their own journey, ready to face the challenges that await. Together, they tackle the deepest dungeons, always seeking tougher challenges to grow stronger. While fighting solo, Narcina faced her mother wielding heavy clubs, relying solely on her martial prowess and physical strength to defeat foes 3 times her size. After defeating your mom, Lost asked if she wanted to rest, but her readiness to keep going was cut short by her stomach rumbling. Lost laughed, teasing her about even the tireless Narcina needing food sometimes. With that, he suggested they stop for lunch. Once everything was prepared, Lost was surprised by the large quantity of food they had. Narcina explained that the innkeeper, Mary, had noticed she hadn't eaten earlier and sent them off with this hearty supply. As they ate, Lost began to share his knowledge about the Hydra, a highly venomous monster with muscular bodies and scales that resist both physical and magical attacks. Hearing this, Narcina couldn't hide her fear and asked if Armia would be alright. Lost explained that while Hydras are relatively common compared to more dangerous monsters, extensive research on them has led to the development of effective strategies and an antidote for their venom, though it's costly. Some groups, like Blade of Lightning, rely on healers like Lyra to monitor the team carefully during such encounters. Lost assured her that Margulis, while boastful, is a capable swordsman, and as long as he doesn't underestimate the Hydra, he can handle it. Siberia, with her agility, might even find opportunities to sneak up on the Hydra despite its multiple heads and wide field of vision. At this, Narcina jealously noted Lost's praise for his old team, and he awkwardly replied that he was merely stating the facts. Changing the subject, she admitted to being tired of visiting the same dungeon daily. Lost suggested trying a new location, and Narcina thought exploring the nearby swamps could be refreshing. Meanwhile, Blade of Lightning was battling the Hydra. Margulis managed to land a powerful strike on one of the Hydra's necks, and Sieg followed suit, severing another head. However, when Sieg hesitated on his next swing, Margulis teased him, accusing him of wanting to leave the Hydra-slaying credit to the leader. Margulis then charged the Hydra, but narrowly dodged a retaliatory strike. Lara, while healing Siberia, questioned Margulis' reckless approach. Siberia remarked that this was just part of his style and joined the fight as soon as her wounds healed. Lara observed Sieg standing back, strategically affecting the Hydra's movements without engaging directly. As Siberia drew the Hydra's focus, Margulis continued his assault with Armia backing up the group with her spells, creating a well-rounded strategy. However, things took a sudden turn when the Hydra hurled a rock at Armia, knocking her down. The monster then approached, terrifying her so much that a strange substance emanated from her. Siberia had never seen this before, so Sieg explained that some monsters feed on a person's fear, transforming it into energy. Lara noticed that this visible fear seemed to be raw mana, which should only be present deep within labyrinths. As the Hydra absorbed this mana, it began to mutate. Sensing danger, C urged Lara to attend to Armia and called for Margulis to pull back, but Margulis, eager to claim the Hydra-slaying title, ignored the warning. He struck the Hydra again, but to his shock, his weapon shattered against the creature's toughened body. Vulnerable, Margulis was almost struck down, but Lost intervened in time to protect his former comrade. Lost rushed to help Armia and questioned Lyra about her condition. Lyra explained that Armia, as a sorceress, had high magical resistance, making typical healing spells less effective on her. Healing her was akin to drying ice, it just wouldn't work. Determined, Lost began layering multiple healing spells at once, a tactic he often used in the past. Lyra was stunned, pointing out that overloading with spells wasn't a guaranteed cure, but Lost persisted, determined to help Armia in any way he could. As Armia slowly regained consciousness, it was clear she was alive but in no shape to continue fighting. Sieg then warned that the Hydra appeared to be calling out Lost specifically. Lost explained that it probably recognized him from previous battles. Marcina asked to join the fight, and Lost allowed it, though he instructed her to retreat if things got dangerous. At the same time, Sieg ordered the rest of Lightning Blade to stay back, which they accepted, especially since Margulis was unable to fight due to his broken sword. Lost and Marcina charged the Hydra, showcasing an impressive strength that shocked Margulis. Margulis couldn't understand why Marcina's sword remained intact, so Lara explained it was a legendary weapon with magical properties. Margulis had thought such artifacts were just myths, but was taken aback seeing one in action. During the fight, C kept up his assault but was struck by the Hydra, which took him hostage. This seemed to prompt the Hydra into demanding a duel with Lost. Lost then ordered everyone to stand back as he faced the Hydra alone. Suddenly far away, a man sensed the change in the wind and quickly wrote something down, closing his eyes. This action caused Lost to momentarily collapse, but he quickly stood up, now emanating an intense energy. A horn emerged from his forehead as the Hydra lunged, but Lost reacted instantly, cutting off all the Hydra's heads in one swift motion. Shortly after, he collapsed again, and when he woke up, he immediately asked Marcina if she was okay. She reassured him, mentioning Lyra had administered an antidote, though she insisted on being reimbursed for its high cost. Lyra also questioned Lost about his transformation, but he had no idea what she meant. Cynically, Margulis praised Lost, claiming he'd always known how capable he was and even suggested that with Lost's help, they could take down the master of the Mad Labyrinth. He then announced he'd split the Hydra's magical stones among 3 people, himself, Lost, and Siberia, leaving out the newer members, whom he dismissed as having done nothing to earn a share. He even declared Marcina as merely an assistant, therefore unworthy of any reward. When Lost asked about Armia, Siberia coldly stated she had left, implying she might never wake up, much less be of use to them. Margulis even suggested selling Armia, as there are enough people out there who like her type. Without hesitation, Marcina punched him, and although Margulis threatened to report her for violating guild rules, C and Lyra both denied witnessing the altercation, dismissing his complaint. Siberia, however, claimed she saw everything and sided with Margulis, until Sieg admitted he actually overheard Margulis discussing selling Armia. As a guild representative, Sieg could not ignore such a serious statement and immediately ordered everyone to return to the city. Upon returning, it was revealed that Sieg was an official investigator from the Royal City's Adventurers Guild, sent to manage the adventurers in this area due to rising safety concerns. His investigation uncovered enough evidence of misconduct by Blade of Lightning to have them expelled from the guild, with the added charge of attempted human trafficking leading to a sentence of forced labor. In a panic, Margulis and Siberia begged for mercy. Lost asked Sieg to spare his former teammates, explaining that although they had become greedy and reckless, they were once noble adventurers who might deserve a chance to start over. Moved by Lost's words, Sieg agreed, ordering the pair to leave for the farthest city and never return. Grateful, they quickly fled. As they watched them go, Marcina felt guilty, fearing her actions had caused their exile. Lost reassured her, saying it was the best outcome, and thanked her for standing by him through everything. Later, Sieg and Lara discussed keeping an eye on the Mart Guild since suspicions were growing that its management might be connected to the city's issues. Sieg proposed they form a new team to help, and Lara agreed on the condition that Armia would join them, as she couldn't bear to abandon her. Sieg agreed, feeling that he too wanted to stay close to these young adventurers, especially Lost, as they faced the challenges ahead. The next day, the new team lets the healer and the martial artist know about their decision to group up. Mark comments that they now have a well-rounded trio, a warrior, a healer, and a mage. Meanwhile, Lost checks in with Armia, asking if she's okay with this new direction in her life. Armia, a bit confused, responds that she really had nowhere else to go and felt indebted to Lara and Seed for saving her. They had already told her not to worry about it, but if repaying the debt made her feel better, they were fine with it. Lost and Narcena remind her that she has new friends now and needs the strength to move forward. After this discussion, the fighter asks Lost what they'll do next, and he explains that they'll first stop by the guild because they forgot to exchange the Hydra's magic stones for money yesterday. He also suggests they take on a mission, as it's an essential income source for adventurers. Narcena knows that adventurer jobs like eliminating monsters, gathering rare items, or acting as bodyguards can bring in good money. Lost adds that taking on missions also builds experience, which touches Narcena, realizing he had thought of her too. Embarrassed, she blushes but tries to play it off and heads to the guild with her cheeks still red. When they arrive, they sense tension in the air with all eyes on them, the guild members staring with stern faces. Through the crowd's murmurs, they learn that Lost the Useless was credited with slaying the Hydra. Picking up on this, Lost warns his partner to stay alert since they're the talk of the town and someone might try to steal their magic stone. Shortly after, an adventurer named Marnell approaches the Dew with his group, asking to speak with the healer. Lost, wary, questions the timing, and Marnell guesses that Lost's companions have made him cautious, so he asks his own companions to step back. With some privacy, Marnell tells the healer that his friends were merely curious about how Lost the Useless defeated such a feared creature. In response, the healer whispers to Narcena that Marnell doesn't seem interested in the stone. Then Marnell surprises them by bowing before Lost, apologizing on behalf of the guild members who turned a blind eye to the actions of Margulis, a vile man whom Lost had to face alone. Many, Marnell included, had even mocked Lost, calling him useless. Now Marnell seeks Lost's forgiveness. Narcena, the fiery tone, suggests that Marnell should kneel and apologize for 3 days and nights, noting that it's little compared to the years Lost endured such treatment. Even if a storm of spears were to rain down on him, it still wouldn't be enough to make up for Lost's suffering. Embarrassed, Lost quickly asks her to stop, fearing that if Marnell accepts, it'll make him look wicked. He admits that despite defeating the Hydra, he still considers himself a failed healer, only able to use basic healing magic. In his mind, he's still Lost the Useless, and would prefer to keep being called that. He extends his hand to Marnell, who, confused, takes it. Marnell promises that Lost can count on him if he ever needs help. With this encounter behind them, Lost and Narcena take the rare Hydra stone to the counter, curious about its worth due to its unique mutation. The clerk informs them that, in fact, the mutation makes it 10 times more valuable because monster mutations are rare, adding that they typically only occur deep within labyrinths, where mana is abundant. Lost mentions that the Hydra mutated in swampy areas, suggesting that mana can accumulate outside labyrinths too. However, Amherst, the clerk, expresses doubt, making Lost wonder if there's something wrong with the labyrinth itself. Narcena asks if the guild typically intervenes in such cases, and Lost notes that they should form an expedition team to investigate the source of the problem. As they discuss, Handsome, another guild staff member, appears, making Amherst nervous. Handsome reads a report stating that intermediate-level monsters are spreading into higher levels and confirming monster mutations outside of labyrinths. Despite this, Handsome dismisses the issues as insignificant, choosing to ignore them. Lost, concerned, insists that adventurers should be warned of the dangers, but Handsome brushes it off, stating that adventurers know the risks. As Lost pushes the issue, Handsome coldly suggests he should leave town if he's that afraid. Leaving Handsome's office, Narcena fumes at his dismissive attitude, but Lost decides to let it go. Amherst then explains that the guild's branchmaster, Mist, rarely appears in public due to his advanced age. Rumor has it that he's so old he rarely leaves his office, leaving Handsome to manage things on his behalf. Lost comments that Handsome must be highly capable for such responsibility, but Amherst adds that he expects perfection from everyone, harshly criticizing even minor mistakes. Because of this, the guild staff find him intimidating. Changing the topic, Lost makes a request to Amherst, and they sit down to review available missions. The options range from gathering medicinal herbs to searching for lost adventurers. Narcena frowns at an escort job where the client needs protection for fishing inside a maze, finding it unworthy of an adventurer. Losing patience, Amherst scolds her with a light flick to the forehead, saying, "It pays well, why not?" Eventually, they find a monster elimination mission, which excites Narcena. However, Amherst warns against it, explaining that there's a phoenix near a teleportation circle in the intermediate levels, a task that's dangerous for their party. Narcena remains motivated, but Lost points out the challenge of battling a flying creature without ranged attacks. Amherst suggests they recruit a warrior, a mage, and a healer with large area healing abilities. Lost and Narcena know exactly who to approach. Without delay, they reach out to Seed and Lyra. Lost quietly tells Narcena that it will be easier to monitor his work this way, and Armia, the mage, can hardly believe he truly wants her on the team. Lost assures her that her talents are valuable, which is why she's welcome in the group. Though she feels undeserving due to her past behavior toward him, Lost emphasizes that acknowledging her mistakes is enough to move forward, convincing her to join. They plan to set out the next morning, leaving Seed to notify the guild, while the others gather supplies. Later, Lost takes Narcena to a drugstore, explaining that burn treatment requires medicine in addition to healing spells. Impressed, Narcena praises his knowledge not just about healing, but about life itself. She then seems to grow pensive, momentarily isolating herself in thought. At that moment, a woman suddenly hugs her from behind, calling her by her nickname, surprising Narcena, who turns to punch her, but the woman dodges with ease. It turns out to be Ralma, a powerful mage known as the Fire Goddess and an old friend of Narcena's father. She explains that Narcena's father asked her to check on her, given how suddenly she left home. Ralma glances at Lost, suspecting he's the reason for Narcena's hasty departure. Lost greets Ralma as his former mentor, which shocks Narcena. The three sit in a tavern and Lost explains that he once trained under Ralma's guidance, while Narcena mentions Ralma's connection to her father. Ralma asks Lost to leave the table, wanting a private chat with Narcena, but he refuses, reminding her that he and Narcena are teammates who trust each other. He suspects Ralma might even be trying to coerce Narcena to return home against her will. Demonstrating his growth, he dodges a fireball she sends his way, convincing Ralma to let him stay. Narcena then admits she left home in a hurry and only left a note saying, "I'm off to see the young man. Don't worry," which both Ralma and Lost find amusingly vague and alarming for her parents. Ralma asks her why she left, and though Narcena hesitates, she hints it was because of Lost. She explains that she had family servants look after him when she heard he'd been expelled from the Blade of Lightning, but decided to join him herself when she could. Lost encourages her to seek her father's blessing, but she worries that doing so might mean never seeing Lost again. Ralma promises to handle the matter. Afterward, with Lost gone to get her a drink, Ralma teases Narcena for her fear of losing Lost, to which Narcena insists that he's no ordinary man as he's not only skilled in battle, but also kind. Although she joined him to help, she's the one who's benefited from him. Ralma tells her that Lost didn't start this way, but rather, he grew into a better person because of her, even challenging Ralma to protect her friend. Feeling encouraged, Narcena leaves the tavern with Lost while Ralma heads to the guild to check on Miss, who seems to be up to something. The next morning, the group gathers for the expedition. Sheila hands them a basket of food, asking if the Phoenix is truly dangerous. Jealous, Narcena takes the basket and assures her that they'll be fine because she'll protect Lost. Sheila, worried, mentions that this only increases her concern, which makes everyone laugh before they set off on their mission. This then marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach our current goal of 20,000 subscribers.